Good evening, everyone. I'm Congressman Bill Foster. I'm a scientist, a businessman, and I'm proud to represent the 11th Congressional District of Illinois in the House of Representatives of the United States. And thank you for joining me for this evening's virtual event on weather emergency preparedness. I'm happy to be here with you and thankful to be joined by a great group of experts who are here to share their knowledge on how to best be prepared for weather emergencies that occur in our region and what resources are available to families and businesses after they do. We are joined tonight by Moises Dugan, the Acting Regional Director for the Federal Emergency Management Administration, better known as FEMA in Region 5. Dan Schulman, the External Affairs Specialist for FEMA Region 5. Declan Binninger, the Chief of Staff for the Illinois Emergency Management Administration, or better known as IEMA. Renisha Brown, the Grants Director of IEMA. Greg Nimmo, the Recovery Chief of IEMA. And then Gina Cunningham, the Mayor of Woodridge, which recently, unfortunately, suffered the brunt of a tornado that came through. And we have also Al Stanish, the Village Administrator of Woodridge. So thank all of you for taking the time to join us this evening and for being available to answer questions. These individuals have deep knowledge of local, state, and federal government emergency response and preparedness, and that along with an understanding and a commitment to the people that they serve. September is National Preparedness Month. The goal of this is to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and emergencies that could happen at any time, because it's really important that we plan ahead and we know what those plans are. Last June, Woodridge and Naperville were struck by a tornado that damaged over 200 homes in the middle of the night. It was tragic for the families that lost their homes or saw them damaged and for the surrounding community, but we were very grateful that no lives were lost. In large part, that's because the emergency systems that had been put in place did their job and saved the lives and worked. State, local, and federal authorities were able to provide support and assistance to those who were hurt by the tornado. And I'm glad that we have the mayor and the village administrator of Woodridge here tonight to tell us more about what happened and how they have been assisting residents in the aftermath. But that is why we need to be prepared for weather emergencies and make sure that people know what resources are available to them when extreme weather events occur. With climate change increasing the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events across the country and across the world, and here in Illinois, it's important that we have really the most up-to-date information and resources. And that's why I'm looking forward to tonight's panel. As always, my office is also here to help. If you run into any roadblocks with a federal agency in any area, please feel free to reach out to my office at 630-585-7672. And a caseworker will be happy to connect with you. I look forward to the upcoming discussion and answering our questions. So please leave any questions that you have in the Facebook or YouTube live comments during tonight's event. And I'm now going to hand it over to Moises Dugan, the Acting Regional Director for FEMA in Region 5. Moises?
Thank you, Congressman Foster, for inviting FEMA and for the opportunity to speak with you and your constituents this evening. I am Moses Dugan, and I'm currently serving in the Acting Regional Administrator role here at Region 5, while Kevin Sly is detailed to our headquarters office as serving as an advisor to the administrator. I've only been in Chicago here for 2 weeks, so I've also, like you've also mentioned, Dan Schulman with our External Affairs Office is also on the line to help address any questions you or your constituents may have. I want to go over just 3 topics tonight during my allotted time. 1, preparing for disasters. 2, how FEMA gets involved after disasters. And of course, 3, how FEMA has been supporting the nation in its response to COVID-19. As far as preparing for disasters, as you mentioned, September marks National Preparedness Month. So this is a great time to talk about what we can all do to prepare ourselves, our families, and our communities for anything that might happen. This year's theme is Prepare to Protect, And there are 3 items for preparedness that I would like to cover, and that are very simple to remember. Make a plan, build a kit, and practice. First, making a plan includes knowing what to do and how to reach your loved ones and know where to go when disaster strikes. The second, building a kit, means simply thinking about those things that you might need in the first hours and days after an event, and have them ready to go just in case that happens. Your kit should include things like extra clothes, medicine, food and water, for not just your family, but for your pets. An emergency radio, batteries, blankets, flashlights, and of course, copies of important documents should also be included. Our website, ready.gov, also has helpful tips on building a kit that is right for you and for really all audiences, including seniors, people with disabilities, families with children, and of course, those with pets. Lastly, practice. A plan and a kit do you no good if no one knows where they are or what to do with them. So when a disaster strikes, have that all planned out so that you're ready. Basically, taking time to sit down with your family, going over your plan, inventorying your kit, and make sure it's updated, because those shorts and the t-shirts that you packed for the summer months may not do you very much good in the middle of January. Now, I want to just transition quickly to how FEMA gets involved in and after disasters. So generally, when events occur, often people ask the question, where is FEMA? And the reality is the vast majority of things that happen never involves FEMA or the federal government. FEMA provides direct support only upon request of a state or tribal chief executive, and only when the event is beyond the combined capability of a state and local government and private nonprofit organizations. Here in Region 5, almost all disasters are effectively managed at the state and local level and with the help of volunteer agencies. Additionally, damages are often covered by insurance, resulting in no need for federal response or recovery assistance. And when there is a need, our state and tribal partners just ask us to conduct joint preliminary damage assessments with them. These joint preliminary damage assessments help us quantify the need, and that information is used by the governor to decide whether to seek a federal disaster declaration. And it is also used by the president in making a decision on whether to declare an event. And of course, we all know that it is the president who makes federal declarations. If a disaster is declared, that triggers federal financial assistance and other support for eligible survivors. However, since FEMA cannot duplicate insurance or other assistance, it is not intended to make people whole. The assistance we provide to most disaster survivors ends up being relatively small on average. Normally, based on our average grants, it's around $6,000 to $7,000 for repairs to primary homes, or for a month or two of temporary living expenses. For most people, the single largest source of recovery assistance is insurance, whether it be homeowners, renters, or flood insurance. So while FEMA assistance is not always available, insurance is. So we just encourage everyone to consult their insurance advisor, talk about your risk and what you can do today to protect your tomorrow. Finally, I want to take a few minutes to discuss how FEMA has been involved with the COVID-19 pandemic. FEMA was tasked early on in the pandemic to lead in several areas. We began by coordinating the acquisition and delivery of personal protective equipment, or PPE. We continued by supporting state and local governments and eligible nonprofits by reimbursing them for eligible expenses of responding and reopening. We served as the coordinator for obtaining federal assets and resources, and most recently, we supported our partners in getting people vaccinated. As a direct result of our efforts here in Region 5, FEMA has delivered more than 124 million pieces of PPE, including respirators and gloves. We've obligated more than 1.5 million in funding for COVID-19 expenses, and more than 660 million of that here in Illinois. We've provided more than 182 million for COVID-19 related funeral expenses, including more than 50 million here in Illinois. And finally, we supported the administration of more than 56 million vaccinations, including 15 million here in Illinois. But we're not done yet. We continue to push to reimburse eligible applicants to provide funeral assistance. But most importantly, we need to make sure that everyone who has not yet gotten vaccinated does so. It is the best protection we have against COVID-19. So if you've not done so, we urge you to please visit vaccines.gov to get more information about a vaccine location near you. So with that, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about FEMA, and I look forward to any questions you may have. So with that, I think it's my turn to turn it over to Declan Benninger of the Illinois Emergency Management Agency to offer his opening remarks. Declan?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll be disappointed when you leave Region 5 because you are a fantastic acting administrator, and I really appreciate having you here. Tracking what you just put out there, I'd like to start where you started talking about preparedness. Your points about making a plan, building a kit, practicing that plan, communicating that plan, making sure the members of your family, of your community, of your group know how that plan is supposed to work in action is absolutely imperative for it to be able to work on the day that you need it. I know that growing up, my father, he's a very technical person. He made us practice our plan. He absolutely did. We had a kit, we knew where it was, and we all knew exactly where we were supposed to rendezvous in the event of an event that was going to separate us in any given way. And I still have those details burned into my head. Though the location no longer exists, though we're all in different parts of the country at this point now, I think at some point when I'm 80 years old, I'll find myself naturally going back to this one location that my father burned into my head, because I know for a fact that if something goes wrong, I'm supposed to go to the hotel at I-55 just off of Weber Road. There was an extended stay America there for a long time. At any rate, this is what it really takes to make sure that you are prepared in that event of a disaster. Building on that, what we do in the state of Illinois really is about tiered response, and that was something that Administrator Dugan was just referring to there. All disasters really do start and end locally. It starts with the town, the city, and then it goes to the county, and then from there it goes to the state, and then from there it goes to the federal government. And when those capacities are exceeded, that's when it goes up to that next level. To take this example of what happened in just a few months ago in Woodridge, the local jurisdiction in Woodridge was extremely well prepared and extremely tight-knit and knew its resources and knew what it could bring to bear. And so they reached out to folks within their mutual aid network to really to supplement their own capabilities to ensure that the residents had what they needed at the time that they needed it. And then at the same time, the county was right there behind them, trying to provide whatever resources they needed or they could at that point, and we were standing right behind the county to ensure that they had what they needed to either provide resources or to conduct disaster damage assessments in order to prepare for recovery. Not all disasters result in a disaster declaration or disaster proclamation, and there are other recovery tools that can be brought to bear short of those declarations, those proclamations that can be sought. For example, in Woodridge, we were able to secure an SBA declaration, a Small Business Administration declaration. At last count, I believe the total amounts that were provided pursuant to that effort were somewhere in the neighborhood of just over $1.5 million in total that was meted out through that effort. Now, again, this only covers the uninsured loss that somebody would suffer as a result of a disaster. And I want to really stress that when we talk about whether or not something's going to meet a threshold or not meet a threshold, the dollar amount that we're talking about is uninsured loss. And so sometimes it gets lost in the mix, and that's important to note. Finally, I just wanted to note that really, as Administrator Dugan referred to, COVID is ongoing. COVID is something that we are still dealing with as well. In fact, we're closing in on 1,000 community vaccination events throughout the state of Illinois that we have helped to organize. And I'm taking liberty saying I helped to organize. It was really people on this team, on this staff that really did the work, and they did a fantastic job. And that is what's, I think, keeping us ahead of the curve when it comes to the vaccination rates that the other states around us are experiencing. So please, to the extent that you feel comfortable doing so, encourage others to get the vaccine, because as was already noted, that is going to be our only fire ticket out of this pandemic. I also want to note that so much of this information in more detail is available on our website. That's illinois.gov/IEMA/preparedness. And I believe that a link to that site will be shared in the chat for your reference. And that has a number of different resources here that you can utilize to develop just kind of a go-by for all sorts of different disasters, whether it was a general all hazards response, whether it was an earthquake, believe it or not, Illinois does get earthquakes, or any other questions you have. We'd be happy to use the function on there, the chat function on there, to get back to you. So thank you very much for the time here. Also with me today is Renisha Brown, our grants chief, and Greg Nimmo, our recovery chief. And they will be available to answer any questions in more detail that would stump me. So thank you very much to both of them for being here today. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Gina Cunningham of the Village of Woodridge so that she can give her remarks. Mayor?
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for the invitation to be here with everyone this evening. We appreciate it. Actually, I've asked Administrator Al Stonich to actually make our opening remarks, but I did want to again thank you, Congressman Foster, for inviting us, and also want to personally thank everyone for all the help that we received after our June 20th tornado in Woodridge. I can say that it really was all hands on deck. We didn't even know exactly what direction, but it all came together very quickly because of all of the swift and generous actions by everyone on the panel, and then so many more. So we thank you very much. Administrator Stonich.
Thank you, Mayor Cunningham. And again, my name is Al Stonich, the Village Administrator of Woodridge. Pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you, Congressman Foster, for having us. In terms of our overall opening remarks, I'll kind of follow that same outline and how best to prepare for a plan. I think Mayor Cunningham and I, we've learned a lot through this, needless to say, and are still learning. But in terms of developing the plan, a key part of that is going to be developing your financial plan. If you take nothing else away from this seminar today, go home and check your insurance policy related to your home, your automobile, your accessory structures. The financial, I cannot overstate the importance of having a financial plan in preparing for a disaster. Understand what your insurance coverage is, what your deductibles are going to be. Is it full replacement or depreciated? Your personal property, what's covered, what's not, your equipment, your appliances, tree replacements, tree removals. If you're a business interruption insurance, what are your coverage limits? That is going to be so important to you. And also, do you have a rainy day fund? You will be surprised how quickly you will be encountering out-of-pocket expenses that you had not prepared for. And be prepared to be enduring a potential loss of your residence for weeks, if not months. And in many cases, it will be months. For example, we have in Woodridge, over 30 homes have our total loss. We have residents who are still in hotels. The tornado occurred on June 20th, and they will be in hotels for a few more months, some of them. So I cannot overstate the importance of a financial plan, financial reserves. In terms of communication, I think Congressman Foster has stated early on in his introduction, the emergency communication systems were working fantastically. I think we heard good feedback from folks about the importance of having your cell phone communication emergency alerts activated on your phone. And the one thing I think maybe a misunderstanding that maybe we as a local government can do a little better as well with our public is understanding what a tornado siren is and what it's not, how it's going to be, what is its purpose, and it's really an outside warning device, right? And it's not necessarily intended to be an internal warning device. And so that's some better education I think we can do as a local government. Sign up for your emergency broadcast system alerts, your reverse 911 systems with your local municipalities. And of course, FEMA has an outstanding emergency app as well. And I can't overstate more the old school weather radio, right? With some battery backup. Mayor Cunningham, as we were touring the neighborhoods, many of the residents consistently said, I will never ignore an emergency alert again. That was consistently what we heard. And in fact, some had heard the tornado siren, some had heard their cell phone go off once, and And it was the second time their cell phone went off that some decided, okay, I think it's time now to start making a move to shelter or my basement. That probably saved quite a few lives and mitigated quite a few significant injuries, in our opinion. In terms of what the role of the local municipality will be, it's going to be focusing on certainly some emergency response in the immediate aftermath. Life safety is our focus, right? It's assessing injuries, a potential loss of life, and ensuring that we can deliver care or allowing people to, if they're trapped, right? That is going to be our primary focus through police and fire and EMS. Public Works will also be deployed significantly in terms of clearing roadway access from tree debris and the like, so that emergency access can get in and out of the neighborhood. We'll be in coordination with our utility partners, right, for down power lines, gas leaks. Police and fire are also going to be looking to determine how best to mitigate those emergencies. There's hazardous trees as well that also are an issue that we try to mitigate in terms of emergency response and mitigating the dangers, the immediate dangers to life. Then we kind of move into repairing and restoring critical infrastructure. Once we know the hazards are mitigated, and we've attended to injuries or life safety issues, then it's restoring the critical infrastructure so that life can continue, commerce can continue, and then the restoration and cleanup can begin. We'll then move into environmental cleanup with debris cleanup, assisting and coordinating with emergency shelter, food, potential financial assistance, working very closely with our federal and state partners, and assessing, working together really to assess the uninsured loss and damage that was referenced previously. And again, as I go back to the financial planning effort, and I'm going to repeat that again, I think a common thought is that, well, I know the federal government's going to step in, or I know the state government's going to step in. There's going to be some sort of financial assistance that's going to be out there. And that's just not necessarily the case, which because of what type of disaster it is. If it's flooding, most people don't have flood insurance, right? So that may result in a trigger of maybe some federal assistance. Wind and tornado, most people have insurance coverage for that. And so you're likely not going to trigger those same sort of thresholds that are necessary for the disaster. The Small Business Administration, the disaster assistance has been exceedingly helpful to our residents. We're extremely grateful for it. And so tip of the cap to our federal and state partners for that assistance. And so hopefully that gives you a little sense of what we think is important to focus on in preparation, and a little bit about what our role is as a municipality in response to a disaster like a tornado. Mayor Cunningham, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Thank you, Al. Thank you very much for all the information. I think some of it is just knowing as a municipality that your neighbors are in need, and being out and visiting neighbors, asking how they are, just checking in. And we did that immediately. I have to say it was critical in our case. The follow-up part was then we knew we needed to do something more. And we put something in place to try to help our neighbors immediately. And it was if we could take anything off of their list of worries or concerns. So that's where Woodridge Neighbors Helping Neighbors kind of evolved from. And we were able to host events that would provide food, clothing, certainly any household item that was needed. But it was also a way for us to connect and check in with our neighbors and make sure that they were doing okay. So we just felt it was important to step up and put some things in place that could really help people. But truly, as a community, we learned so much. We learned what we could do to help make a difference at this critical time in many, many families' lives. And I feel that it has been a huge blessing to us. And we continue through this day. We actually have an event this weekend coming up where we'll be doing a food, we call them Neighbors Helping Neighbors Give, with the Northern Illinois Food Bank mobile truck. So just to share, I think that Every community is different. However, in our case, it just was what felt right. And, we certainly don't do it alone. We do it with a lot of help, and we thank everyone. And that's all I have. So thank you so much, Administrator Stonich.
Well, and thank you, Mayor. And I also want to thank Declan for his shout out of the interchange at Weber Road and I-55, which for those of you who suffer through that intersection, it is undergoing a big upgrade with, if I'm not mistaken, a significant amount of federal funds to get what's called a dual diverging diamond interchange, similar to the one at I-59 and I-88, if you're familiar with that. And it is going to be life-changing for people that have been suffering through that interchange. Just want to point that out. The first question we have here, what is the, what do people most often misunderstand about the work of your agency or organization that you think is really important that they know? Moises, do you want to take a shot at that? You probably had all kinds of incorrect questions headed your way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing that really comes to mind is really the understanding of what is covered by certain types of insurance policies, and knowing that, or not finding out until after the fact that flood insurance is not covered by your general hazard type of insurance. That I would think would be the biggest misunderstanding that's out there. As far as an agency is concerned, one of the things that I mentioned was that our assistance is not created to make anyone whole. In fact, it's very limiting if you look at the averages of what is pushed out to individuals. And so it looks like my light just timed out on me here in this office. I apologize. But really, that is to me the biggest concern, or the misunderstanding we have, is that it is not intended to be a process or an assistance program that makes you whole, but rather is there to provide you with some assistance, but not to the extent that I think some people might have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of insurance, Mayor Cunningham and Al, have you had a pretty good experience with the insurance companies? Or is it a mixed bag? Because you only what is the phrase that you find out who's swimming naked when the tide goes out, and and trying to and so but overall, have they done pretty well, or are there real things that have become issues? Do you have any feeling about that?
Well, yes, we have heard quite a bit. I think, overall, I think those that have issues have extreme issues. And we have been hearing those issues. So we still have some homes that have not been, even have the roofs replaced at this point. They're still covered in tarps. We actually were out this weekend at a home trying to help them get debris off their property. And it's been 3 months already. So it's tough for some. Some have weathered it very well. I think it prompted us as a community. And, I know that we are pushing and actually working with our library to host a informative session about insurance, about being prepared, reviewing your insurance for this exact reason, because many people were found to either be underinsured or they thought things would be covered, and unfortunately have been finding the exact opposite. So it's been tough times for many. Also, we had neighbors that feel that, I never had a claim prior to now, and this is a tough one. It's not a car, it's your home. It might be your cars, plural, a deck, it could be many things, trees on your property. So it's a hard hit. And if you've never had an insurance issue prior, it's tough. So we're going to try to help prepare people though. and be able to ask better questions and make sure that they know what their coverage is. We feel that's very important. Administrator Stonich, anything else you may have, Al?
Yeah, probably only thing I would add to that for those who are watching today is as you work through a post-disaster with your insurance company on covering your losses, don't take necessarily no, it's declined for the first answer. Unfortunately, and I won't necessarily name some insurance companies, but there's been some who have had some coverage disputes, shall we say, and some arm wrestling. And I would just say encourage folks to, make sure you're getting the most out of your policy and make sure that you're getting what you expect from your policy in terms of not just being, if you will, pushed around and accepting the first no, your claim is denied as the first answer. Unfortunately, some of our residents have had to exert a little more effort on that than what you would hope it would be necessary.
Mm-hmm. And where can people find a good source of up-to-date information about weather emergencies and other type of emergencies, and also, since we're talking about it, counseling on the amount and type of insurance policies to carry?
So, Mr.
Yeah.
This is Moses with FEMA. I would say that a good place for weather alerts, really not just for your local, your current location, but it can support up to 5 additional locations. The FEMA app, you can plug in places where your kids are going to school in different areas of the country, where grandparents live, and so forth. You can plug in up to 5 places and be notified when weather is going in and transiting the areas that your loved ones live in. So to me, I find that is a very helpful app for many purposes, but I think that's very helpful and a kind of an underutilized tool that we have at FEMA.
And just in terms of information on the web, what are the go-to sources there that people should look at to educate themselves about the whole circumstance? Anyone else?
Well, Congressman, I'd like to jump in and say, you can always start at FEMA.gov. Declan mentioned IEMA's website as well. Of course, our website for all things preparedness is ready.gov in terms of the information that you would want to have in advance of a disaster. There's also helpful information on cleaning up and how to manage after a disaster happens. So all that information is on our website at FEMA.gov or at ready.gov. I know a lot of that information, as an Illinois resident, I will say, a lot of that information is also on IEMA's website with a lot of really helpful links, both for individuals and then, of course, the different audiences that might be looking for information, whether it's people with disabilities, more seasoned Americans, families with pets, families with children like mine. And all that information is there on our website and on IEMA's website as well.
Yeah, and Congressman, there's just one other thing I'd add is that in addition to these tools that are available online at all times, every county in the state of Illinois has an assigned emergency manager, and those folks also conduct outreach within their community. And getting information through them is always, more information is always better. And they are dedicated to doing this work all day, every day, and they do great work. As both Al and Mayor Cunningham can attest, DuPage County standing right behind them when they suffered through their terrible disaster, and us standing right behind DuPage County. It was fantastic to have a partner like them out there.
Okay, so here's an interesting question. What are the first things a person should do during and after a weather emergency?
Well, I can take that one if you like, Congressman. First thing is really, if you have that plan, exercise that plan. If you know that plan, if you know where you're supposed to go, then put it into action. That's why you did it. But there are so many different kinds of weather emergencies, and that's really going to dictate how you're going to have to respond. If it's, we all know what to do in a tornado, I think, because it's been drilled into our head. You go in the basement, you wait for the all clear. If it's a flood, obviously don't go in the basement. So it's really going to depend on the kind of event that you're suffering through at that time. But then your first call should always be, if you feel that you're in distress, is 911. Don't call your insurance person. Don't call, your neighbor. Don't call your friend. Call 911. Your emergency services are there for a reason, and they are standing by and ready because they are tracking these issues as they happen and are prepared to respond when they happen.
All right, here's another one. How can pet owners be prepared to make sure that their pets will be safe during an emergency?
Hey, Declan, I'll take this one. As a pet owner, I can tell you, the first thing that you need to do is treat your pets the way you would any other member of your family. So those medical records about your pet, having copies of them both in your home or in another location. When you're preparing for your pet, making sure that you've got their food and their medicine in a convenient location that you know about, that you can take with you if you have to leave your home. As well as thinking about if you have to leave your home and go to another location, thinking about and making sure that the place you're planning to go is a place that will take pets. Some hotels will allow you to bring your pet with you, other places won't. And we've seen this in disasters really across the country where people's evacuation decisions entirely depend on whether their pet can go with them. And we're talking, of course, the regular house pets that you expect, the dogs and the cats and the birds. But as we know, people have all kinds of animals as pets. And so knowing where you're going to go and how you're going to get there with your pet, whether the place you go will accept your pet, and then, of course, having their important medical information, food and water, and toys. Disasters are really stressful for kids and for pets. And having some of those comfort things with you, if you have to leave your home, is really a game changer, both for your pets and for your kids. So bringing toys and treats, those are really things that you want to make sure that you grab with you when you're leaving or put in your kit as you're making that kit before a disaster.
Interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that toys would be on that list, but it makes perfect sense. What special precautions should pregnant women or families with small children take to be prepared for weather emergencies or loss of electricity for long lengths of time?
Yes, this really goes right back to what Mr. Dugan was talking about earlier. Make sure you develop that plan and think about what is going to be in your kit at all times. If you have a small child, make sure you have formula. If you have a pet, like Dan was just talking about, make sure you have dog toys for them. It really depends on what your family unit, what your group looks like. Make sure that that is included in your plan, included in your kit, and then update it as appropriate. If you are no longer pregnant, now you have a child, maybe you need some those sorts of things.
Yeah. And I will make the plug, sir, for ready.gov, which we have specific planning documents for people with disabilities, and those time sensitive things, as Declan mentioned, making sure that you're keeping an eye on your kit and updating it as things change in your life. So the kit you build now while you're pregnant is not going to be the same kit you need in 6 or 9 months when you've had the baby, and making sure you're updating your kit as appropriate as time goes on.
Yeah, I know in that very impressive community response that I saw in Woodridge, I remember that one of the most popular items were the diapers. And it was big piles of diapers that were appearing and disappearing, if I remember properly. Or maybe I'm sensitive to diapers, having just become a granddaddy 4 months ago. But
Congressman, if I may just add 2 points to that, I'll plug another app. It's called smart911.com, and would encourage folks to register to that site. And it goes a little deeper in terms of your profile of your home, your family, and your own sort of, if there are anybody with disabilities in your household, if you have pets, how many children or other individuals are residing in your home. That is key information that our first responders will access and rely upon through the dispatchers and then relayed to our fire and police personnel when they are responding to your home. So they understand what to expect going into your house, what maybe to look for, who to look for, it's really vital information that I encourage people to share. And the second point I want to make is in the aftermath of the tornado is Mayor Cunningham and I certainly experienced, and this kind of would be expected, is the psychological trauma and post-traumatic stress that families, pets, their pets sustain that trauma, and children, right? And to be prepared for that, to acknowledge it, and to seek assistance in working through those types of traumatic experiences that individuals will need to help them cope through it.
And is there special advice for folks who are responsible for their elderly loved ones or perhaps a disabled family member? What are the special considerations there?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
sir. And if I can jump in and say, first and foremost is the same way that you build a plan for yourself and your own family, thinking about those loved ones that may not live with you. And so if there's an emergency, we saw this in the tornado with downed trees and down power lines, thinking about who's that second contact that's going to be able to respond and help get to your loved one. If you can't, if you're stuck in your home, if you're stuck in your neighborhood, and somebody else needs to go. So thinking about the what if. So what if I can't get there? What if I'm on a work trip and out of town and I'm not there when something happens? Who's my backup? And do they know what the plan is? Do they know what the plan is for my loved one and where they're going to go? Are they familiar with where their go kit is if they have one? But if not, where are the medical documents? Where are the lists of medicines that they need to take with them? Have you thought about where they're going to go and how they're going to be taken care of during that emergency? So it's a difficult conversation to have with your family, but it's one that you need to have to think about, what if I'm not there? So really make that plan, make that kit, but then also think, what's my next step if there needs to be a next step as well.
Yeah, this is Moses, and I would also add that so many things that we do today is power driven and generated, and so when the power goes out and there's so much that is dependent, whether it's the oxygen or the chairlifts and things of that nature, you really have to look at some contingencies by which to provide either that resource or look for different ways to go about achieving the same results. So all that really has to be built into those plans that are built at the family level.
Mhm. Yeah, it's remarkable how dependent we are on our cell phones, especially in emergencies. And I had my daughter and son-in-law were trapped in Texas during the extended outage. And, if they had the ability to recharge their cell phones through their car, it would have been a different existence. And these days, when there is a big weather event, is it typical that the cell phone system is repaired pretty quickly or simply doesn't fail? Is it redundant enough, or is this a common problem that the cell phone system won't be up for, hours or days?
That's certainly something to keep in mind at all times, Congressman, because you don't know how long it's, if it's a power outage, how long it's going to be for the power to come back on. If it's a telephone outage, how long it's going to be for that service to be restored. So having that plan is absolutely important and absolutely imperative. As I'm sure Mr. Dugan can elaborate on, this infrastructure planning is something that we do all the time to ensure that that the infrastructure companies are involved in intricately in how we would respond as a state.
Mhm. And do they have requirements to be resilient? I remember the old, the plain old telephone system, had big buildings with giant lead acid batteries in the basement, so that the telephone system could keep going even when the electricity was gone for days. And is there something like that for cell phone systems? Do they end up being pretty reliable in emergencies, or do people really need a plan for living without their cell phones for a while?
Congressman, when I'm not acting as the regional administrator in Region 5, I'm the full-time deputy regional administrator in FEMA Region 6, and we just had Hurricane Ida come through. And in that particular case, with respect to cell phone services, we were very surprised at how much remained after the event. And then what we were more surprised by was how well the different cell phone providers interacted with each other, such that they would allow other customers to use their networks if they were up. And so that collaboration within the private sector, which is something we haven't talked about here very much, but that private sector partnerships are alive and well. And so many times they are the ones that will find out those solutions to get that type of service. It may not be 100% reliable, but it does provide you some level of service that gets people back to being able to talk to family members and accounting for one another.
That's right. Well, if you can text message your children, it's a different world than if you can't. And so you don't need like streaming Netflix video. you need basic communications. And well, that's good to know that, Verizon didn't say, well, I'm sorry, you have a T-Mobile contract, so we're not going to, and T-Mobile's antenna was down, that they actually just said, if you, in an emergency, any antenna is usable. And that's actually really good. And it's good that, I wonder if they only did that because government ordered them to, or whether they did it out of the goodness of their hearts. And that either way, it's a good and necessary part. Well, I think we're pretty much out of time here. So I just want to thank you all again. This is, your job is really important. It's the nature of emergency preparedness, is that you spend a lot of time working on something that we all hope won't happen. But the truth is that, hundreds of times every year, it happens to some community. And we're really very grateful when you're there. And you're there, you're prepared, you've thought about it, even when not everyone in our communities have. And so I think I'm happy to be trying to do our part in making sure that the communities I represent are better prepared and have thought about it and have made plans and have, the necessary emergency equipment, at least in a closet. And actually, one last question: where's the best place to store your stash of emergency stuff? Is it the closet, the basement, the attic, your car? What's the wisdom on that?
I think the short answer is yes. Have as many kits as you can in as many places as possible, because you don't know where you're going to be when that happens.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for everything you do. The preparations that you help us make, they really save lives. You can see it. Several people told me after the tornado that they barely made it underground, back in shelter because of the warning systems. And a lot of people worked hard to make those warning systems work. And when they worked, they saved lives. And so you should be proud forever of that. Anyway, thank you all for coming out, and look forward to holding more conversations like these in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you.